Welcome back to Dark Hours. Tonight I'm sharing true Appalachian horror stories. These mountains may look beautiful, but they hide a darker truth. People get lost, roads twist where they shouldn't, and some hollows keep secrets that don't want company. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Let's begin. My name's Daniel, and I grew up in the Blue Ridge. Folks here don't just call it home, they call it alive. I know that sounds strange if you're not from these parts, but that's how it is. The mountains listen, they remember, and if you push them wrong, they'll remind you quick who was here first. I grew up hearing the old rules. Don't whistle after dark, don't leave food on the porch overnight, and if you hear your name whispered in the tree line, don't answer back. I always thought it was just old folks keeping kids out of trouble. But one night out past the fire roads, I learned those rules weren't made for kids. They were made for anyone who planned to survive. It started with what sounded like a simple errand. A neighbor told me about an old ranger shack out by a washed-out fire road, a place rangers had used before the new stations were built closer to the parkway. He swore he'd seen smoke drifting up from that hollow and wanted me to take a look. He thought maybe squatters were back there. I thought maybe he was bored and looking for a story, but I agreed anyway. I do odd jobs around here, and I figured it would be a quick check, maybe half an hour. Grab a flashlight, walk the trail, report back. Easy. The road in narrowed until it was nothing but two muddy ruts. I parked when the pines grew too close and started on foot. There's a smell here you can't find anywhere else, not even in other parts of Appalachia. Damp earth mixed with coal dust, sweet locust blossoms, and something sharper, metallic, like old iron water. That night it hit heavy, almost coppery on my tongue. My grandfather used to say when the air tastes like pennies, the mountain's warning you. I laughed that off once. I didn't laugh that night. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. Cicadas went still. Even my boots on the wet leaves sounded muffled, like the forest was swallowing the noise. After a mile or so, I found the shack. It clung to the slope like it didn't want to be found. Porch sagging, tin roof punched through. But what made my stomach knot were the carvings, spirals. Dozens of them burned and cut into the porch beams, circling inward until the wood had swollen around them like scars. My grandmother used to talk about miners carving signs to keep the knockers at bay, the spirits that tapped warnings before a collapse. Looking at those spirals, I remembered her voice clear as day, telling me some things underground were older than people, and hungrier too. That's when I heard it. Clicking. 2 clicks. Pause. 3 clicks. Pause. Then 4. Not random, not loose rock. Deliberate. The sound came from behind the shack, from the limestone bluff where the rock had split just wide enough to show blackness inside. A cave. My stomach dropped. My grandmother's other warning came back to me. Never follow a sound into stone, but curiosity's a stubborn thing, and I stepped inside anyway. The air hit me cold and wet, thick with that mineral tang like wet pennies. My flashlight shook across walls, scratched with the same spirals I'd seen outside, only these were fresh, sharp, as if carved last week. The clicking echoed in patterns I couldn't pin down. It bounced around me until it felt like it was inside me, keeping time with my pulse. I tried to tell myself it was water dripping, or bats, or just my imagination, but deep down, I knew better. Something was answering. I pushed deeper until the passage opened into a chamber, wide and high, black as tar. That's when I saw them, coins scattered across the base of the far wall, old silver, worn smooth, copper gleaming like fire. My grandmother once told me folks left coins for the dead in these hills, so their spirits could pay toll to cross over, but these weren't offerings. They were waiting. I bent down, picked one up, and the clicking stopped. Silence crashed over me, so heavy it rang in my ears. Then came a single knock, deep, slow. From above, in the dark. My light sputtered and died. I froze, heart slamming, every instinct screaming that I wasn't alone. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, and then I ran. Or maybe I was pushed, I don't remember. One moment I was blind in the dark. The next I was outside, gasping under the rain. Mud plastered up my legs. The shack loomed behind me, silent. The mountain felt like it was holding its breath. Back home, I scrubbed the mud off and saw it, a faint red spiral on my wrist, right where I'd felt that second pulse in the cave. It faded by morning, but under certain light I still catch it, faint and shifting like it's under the skin. And the coin I took? It sits on my dresser. Most days it's dull, ordinary, but every now and then it shines like fire, and if the house is quiet enough, I hear it again. That patient clicking, counting upward, like the mountain hasn't finished with me yet. I've told myself I imagined it, that caves echo strange, that miners carved those spirals out of boredom, but every story I grew up hearing feels heavier now. The knockers, the ghost lights, the whispers in the hollows. They weren't just tales to keep kids close. They were warnings. The mountains don't like to be disturbed, and I think that night I disturbed something that remembers me. I don't drive that way anymore. Don't go near the old fire road. Still, sometimes late at night when the coin catches the glow of the lamp, I wonder if the clicking's getting closer. And I wonder how high the count goes. My name's Caleb, and I don't think I'll ever go camping in the Blue Ridge again. I grew up here, born and raised in western North Carolina, and the woods always felt like a second home. I know the trails, the sounds, the smells, and I thought I knew the rules. But last fall, I learned something I wish I could forget. The mountains don't always want you here. Sometimes they let you in just long enough to remind you that you're never in charge. It started as a regular weekend trip. My buddy Tyler had just gotten back from out of state, and a couple of us figured we'd meet up, pack some gear, and head up to a clearing we knew near the parkway. It wasn't a marked campsite, just a flat stretch near a spring, a place we'd found as teenagers and kept to ourselves. 4 of us went: me, Tyler, Chris, and Josh. We were all in our 20s, tired of jobs, bills, and city noise. The woods were supposed to be a break. The first night felt like old times. We built a fire, told the same stories we'd told 100 times, drank cheap beer, and stared up at a sky so full of stars it didn't look real. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the kind of night you carry with you when you're old. I had no idea it would be the opposite. I woke up sometime before dawn to take a piss. The fire was down to coals, the air sharp with that wet autumn bite. I stepped into the tree line, and that's when I saw it. A little stack of stones, maybe 6 of them, balanced neat on top of each other. It was right by the path, too clean to be random. I crouched, touched one. It was cold, slick with dew. I figured one of the guys had done it as a joke, so I laughed under my breath and went back to the tent. The next morning I brought it up. Which one of you made the little rock tower? They all looked at me blank. Tyler said, "What rock tower?" I told them what I'd seen, and Josh chuckled, said maybe it was a hiker before us. But the way they looked at each other made me feel like they didn't believe it either. We shrugged it off, made breakfast, and went about the day. That afternoon we hiked down toward the creek. The leaves were turning, air full of that dry rustle you only get in October. On the way back up, Chris froze. Guys?" Ahead of us, just off the trail, was another stack of stones. Taller this time. Maybe 10 rocks, narrowing to a point. No sign of anyone else around. We stood there too long, none of us saying what we were thinking. Finally, Josh muttered, "People do that. Cairns. Trail markers." But this wasn't a marked trail. No blazes. No signs. Just us. That night the mood was different. We still made a fire, still cooked our food, but the laughter was thinner, forced. Every time a stick cracked in the woods, somebody's head jerked up. I kept telling myself it was just kids' games. But deep down, I felt the weight of it. My grandfather used to tell me stacked stones weren't decorations. He said they marked boundaries, lines you weren't supposed to cross, or graves that were better left unspoken. He'd warned me once, if you see them start to circle, you leave. I hadn't thought of that in years. Around midnight I woke again, no reason, just that sudden jolt of being pulled out of sleep. The fire was low, shadows long and trembling. I sat up and felt my stomach drop. There were stone stacks around us. Not just one, not 2, at least a dozen, all about knee-high, circling the campsite just beyond the glow of the fire. Perfect little towers, balanced too neat to be an accident. I shook Tyler awake, then Chris and Josh. At first, they swore I was messing with them, but then they saw the ring. We all stood there, 4 grown men, staring like kids who'd found a monster under the bed. Nobody spoke. The woods were too quiet. No crickets, no owls, nothing. Just the crack of our fire. Josh swore, grabbed a stick and kicked one over. Rocks clattered to the ground. See? Nothing. He laughed, but it sounded wrong, shaky. We all tried to laugh with him, but I noticed his hand trembling as he threw the stick back in the fire. Eventually, we crawled back into our tents. I didn't sleep. By morning, the stacks were gone. Every last one. No rocks on the ground, no piles. Just empty leaf litter. Tyler muttered, "Maybe we all dreamed it," but I could tell by his eyes he didn't believe that. We decided to pack up early, head back down. But Josh wanted to stay one more night. He said leaving after a spook was admitting we were scared, and he wasn't about to do that. Against my gut, we agreed. That evening, the woods felt heavier. The fire wouldn't catch right, smoke blowing in our faces no matter where we sat. We didn't talk much. Everyone kept glancing at the tree line. When I got up to grab water, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A stone stack again, but this time it wasn't just rocks. Sticking out from between them was a scrap of cloth. Red flannel, the same pattern Chris was wearing. "Hey Chris," I called, voice tighter than I meant. "Did you rip your shirt?" He frowned, checked, and sure enough, his sleeve had a tear he hadn't noticed. The strip matched. We stood there staring at that pile, at that piece of him woven into it. Nobody touched it. That night, the woods closed in. I swear I heard whispering, soft, low, like words in a language I didn't know. Tyler said he heard it too, and his face looked like death. We huddled by the fire, 4 guys who thought they were tough, now shaking like kids. Around 2 in the morning, Josh got up suddenly. "Screw this. I'm gonna knock them all down." He grabbed his flashlight and stormed into the dark. We tried to stop him, but he was gone before we could. Minutes passed, then we heard it. Rocks clattering, his voice yelling, "You like that? Huh?" Then silence. Dead silence. We shouted his name, but no answer. Tyler grabbed his light and we followed. The beam bounced through trees until it caught something that made me want to throw up. Dozens of stone stacks. Everywhere, not just around the camp, lining the trail, filling the spaces between trees. Hundreds of them, all taller now, some up to my chest. And in the middle of them, Josh's flashlight still on, beam pointing up at nothing. No sign of him, just his light lying in the leaves. We didn't wait, we didn't pack, we ran. I don't even remember half the trail down, just stumbling, falling, scrambling until we hit the road and piled into my truck. None of us spoke the whole drive back. Chris was crying, Tyler staring dead ahead. I just kept gripping the wheel, knuckles white, heart hammering like it would split me in half. We told the sheriff the next day. They went up, searched. They found the clearing, found our tents, even found the fire pit still warm. But no stones, no stacks, no Josh. They said maybe he wandered off drunk, maybe got lost. But I know what I saw. So did Tyler, so did Chris. It's been a year now, and Josh has never turned up. His folks held a service, but no body, no answers. Sometimes at night I dream of those stacks, hundreds of them closing in, and I dream of Josh standing among them, not moving, just staring, with rocks balanced up to his shoulders. My grandfather's voice keeps coming back, "If they circle you, you leave." We didn't leave soon enough. And every time I drive past the parkway now, I feel the weight of it, like the mountain knows me, like it remembers. So let me ask you, have you ever seen stacked stones out in the woods where they didn't belong? If you have, don't touch them. Don't knock them down. Don't wait to see how many there'll be the next night. Just leave. I don't know how many of you have actually stepped onto the Appalachian Trail, but the first thing you notice, after the white blazes and the endless routes, is how loud quiet really is. It's not silence. It's wind, worrying the leaves. It's the high whine of mosquitoes under your hood. It's your own breath inside your rain shell sounding bigger than it has any right to. That's what I was hearing the night I realized something was wrong. Forest noise, steady and familiar, and then one small sound that didn't fit. Zip, stop, zip. Like a plastic bag being sealed, followed by someone holding their breath. I was hiking alone through a stretch of Virginia in May, 3 days of light rain behind me, a fresh front moving in. Trail names optional out there. People called me Socket because I fix things. I'm not a through hiker. My knees would mutiny, but I do sections. I had a long weekend, a stubborn streak, and a plan. 3 shelters, 60-odd miles, out before my boss at the garage even noticed I was gone. I'd done this section twice in better weather. It should have been boring. Late afternoon, I passed a couple going northbound. He wore a sun hat like a lampshade. She had a bandana tied to her pack like a tail. They were arguing in that married way where no one raises a voice. They just take turns saying, "It's fine," louder each time. 10 minutes later, a southbound guy with cat scratches on his shins asked if I'd seen a black dog. I hadn't. We did the standard exchange. Water source status. Where's the next privy? Any blowdowns? And kept moving. Hiker talk is efficient. You learn what matters, and you strip the rest away. The sky went pewter late in the day. I put the hood up on my rain shell and did the math. If I pushed, I could make the shelter before dark. A little after 7, I hit the Blue Blaze Spur. A brown sign with reflective letters said Raven Shelter, 0.3 miles. Below that, someone had carved a smiley face that made the whole sign feel worse. I took the spur. The air down there had a canned taste. Low place, thick with wet. The smell changed too. It went from leaf mold and damp wood to something sharper, like water mixed with a cleaning product. The shelter looked normal at first glance. 3-sided wooden floor, tin roof that pinged when the first heavy drops hit. Bare cables looped between 2 trees. A picnic table sat in front under a tarp that somebody had tightened so well the water rolled off it in beads like mercury. There was no one inside. I dropped my pack, pulled my food bag, and sat on the edge of the floor to eat. You don't cook in shelters if you can help it. Mice love a kitchen, but it was starting to come down in sheets. I fired up my stove for ramen. The hiss of the burner felt loud. Every time I glanced into the trees, the rain looked back. That's when I heard the zip, stop, zip. Not my bags, not my tent. It came from the right side of the shelter, beyond the posted bear box, down toward the creek. Another sound followed, plastic flexing when you pack something tight. Then footsteps, slow. I clicked off the stove. "Hey," I called without standing. "Anybody coming in?" The footsteps paused. A voice said, "Did you sign the register?" Shelters have notebooks. A trail register you scribble in. It's where people write jokes and weather complaints and little notes like, "Trail magic at VA 622, with a smiley that means you'll arrive to lukewarm hot dogs, and a guy named Big Jim treating you like you're crossing the Antarctic. I hadn't signed yet. "Not yet," I said, and the voice said, "You should," and then nothing. I walked to the corner. The register lay in a dry box on the shelf, spiral bound, a pen on a string stabbed through its rings. I flipped it open. There were the usual notes. Day 41. Blisters are finally healin'. Shout out to the guy who gave me his last Snickers, true trail angel. We saw a bear at noon. He did not care about us at all. And then something else. A page with neat block handwriting. Dates, times, little arrows drawn, between entries like a diagram. On the top of the page in tiny letters, boundary, closed. I ran my finger down the page and noticed 2 entries in the same hand but different names. One Anderson, one Derek. The same block letters, the same too perfect spacing. The times were a half hour apart, both saying, left northbound. The next day a note in a third name, Great Shelter. Left southbound. Same handwriting, same neatness. The arrows pointed to those lines and underlined twice, done. The register smelled faintly like bleach. I shut it because my brain didn't want it to smell like anything. Rain hammered the roof. The woods hissed in sympathy. Half my ramen had turned to paste. A figure moved in the trees then. Not a bear, a person in a poncho, the kind you buy at a gas station, thin plastic dangling in tatters where branches had torn it. He came from the direction of the creek and walked with his head down, like he was following his feet. He stepped into the open and pushed the poncho hood back. He was young, maybe 20, face too clean for someone living in the dirt. He had that AT look, lean, hollow in the cheeks, eyes too bright. But it read more hospital bright than distance bright. He wore a small pack like the kind day hikers use. That's what he looked like, someone who'd left a car at the trailhead and never came back. "You sock it?" he asked, too casual, like we had a plan I'd forgotten. "That's me." Trail names slip out of strangers like they're owed. He set his pack on the edge of the shelter, then didn't step inside. "What's today?" he said. It wasn't a normal question. It came out like a test. "Thursday," I said. He smiled a little. "Good." I thought maybe I missed some. He flicked water from his hair. "You signed the register?" "You asked me that already." "Not me," he said, and that hit wrong in a way I couldn't categorize. "Saw notes," I said. "People leave notes," he said, eyes flicking to the book. "That's what people do." He sniffed once, a quick dog thing. "Smells clean." "Does it?" He didn't answer. He stepped forward and looked at my stove. "You got more fuel?" he asked. "Or just the one?" "I've got enough," I said. He nodded. "Good. You shouldn't run out." He took off his poncho and shook it carefully, like he didn't want the drops to go in the north, I told him, even though it came out clipped. I didn't like the way his questions stacked, one after another, like he was checking boxes. He gave me that too clean smile again. "North is longer." He turned his head, looking at the tree line instead of me. "Sometimes people don't come back from north." I laughed, soft and fake. "People get hurt. Happens anywhere." He leaned his pack against the wall but didn't sit down. He pulled at the zipper like he was making sure it still worked, then let it go. The sound was the same I'd heard earlier. Zip. Stop. Zip. I felt my gut tighten. "What's in there?" I asked, trying to make it a joke. "You're not packing rocks, are you?" He tilted his head, calm. "You ever bury anything in the woods and forget where? You mark it, right? Otherwise the ground eats it." He patted the bag. "This is just things. But the ground remembers." The rain thickened. The tarp over the table groaned as water pooled, then spilled in a rush. It sounded like someone drawing breath. "You heading out in the morning?" I asked, mostly to hear my own voice. "Morning's late," he said. "Sometimes it comes early here, sometimes it doesn't come at all." He finally stepped into the shelter, sat opposite me, and set his hands flat on the wood. His fingernails were rimmed dark, but the skin between them looked scrubbed raw, too clean. I forced myself to eat. Each bite of ramen was glue sticking in my throat. He watched, not hungrily, not rude, just watched, like he was memorizing. After a long silence, he said, "You shouldn't whistle here." That jolted me. I wasn't planning on it. "You'd be surprised," he said. "People do it without thinking. They hear something faint and they answer. That's how you get counted." "Counted?" He smiled wider, almost too wide. "Boundaries close. Someone's always counting." The rain went on, steady as breath. I wanted to leave then. I wanted to shoulder my pack, hike back up the spur, and pitch my tent under a pine miles away. But there are rules on the AT. You don't leave someone alone if you can help it. You don't abandon the register. You don't assume the woods will keep you safe. So I stayed. By midnight, I was half asleep, curled in my bag. That's when I heard him again. Not breathing, not snoring. Working the zipper on his pack, slow, deliberate. Zip. Stop. Zip. I lay frozen, eyes on the dark rafters. Then another sound, the scrape of pen on paper. I turned my head just enough. He was bent over the register, writing. His shoulders moved with neat precision. Every few lines he'd stop, glance toward me, then keep going. When he finally closed the book, he set the pen down gently, like he didn't want it to roll. He didn't go back to sleep. He just sat there, staring out into the trees, like he was waiting for something to arrive. I must have drifted at some point. The next thing I knew, dawn light seeped gray through the rain. The kid was gone. His pack, his poncho, gone too. The shelter smelled faintly sharp, like bleach mixed with wet wood. The register lay on the shelf, open to a fresh page. I looked. My trail name was written there. Socket, in block handwriting I had never made. Time stamped, 4:12 a.m., next to it a neat arrow pointing north. Underlined twice. I hadn't touched the pen. I closed the book, slid it back in the box, and shouldered my pack. I didn't cook breakfast. I didn't even tie my boots right. I just walked, harder and faster than I ever had. Every rustle sounded like footsteps. Every bird call bent, in my ears, toward 3 notes strung together. By noon, I reached the road crossing, where the blazes spit you out onto gravel and traffic hums faint through the trees. I stopped there, hand on the guardrail, and realized I was holding my breath. I've hiked other sections since. I've stayed in shelters with snoring through hikers, seen bears raid bear cables, walked through storms that knocked whole trunks across the trail. But I haven't set foot at Raven Shelter again. And I'll tell you this much, when I pass a register now, I sign my name quick, sloppy, and I never check if anyone's written it for me already. Because sometimes, on the long quiet nights, I still hear that zip, stop, zip, and I know someone's counting. I smelled wood smoke before I saw the house, drifting low through the rain the way it always does in the hollers of the Blue Ridge. My phone had died a mile back, and the road I was on, one of those narrow Appalachian back roads carved into the side of a ridge, had turned to nothing but mud ruts and slick clay. Night was closing in, fog curling between the trees, when a lantern glow appeared below the switchback. It looked warm and steady, but out here, any light at the wrong time can be a gamble. My name's Ryan. I've lived in these mountains my whole life, born in a town most maps leave off, working nights at a gas station by the switchbacks where coal trucks grind gears on the way down. Folks say Appalachia will take care of you if you respect it, but I've learned it can turn mean in a heartbeat. That night I was out past common sense, chasing a cheap trail camera I'd promised to install for an old-timer who wanted to catch whoever was stealing his gas cans. I took the wrong cut near a washed-out culvert, then another wrong turn because the flood markers were down, and soon the road wasn't a road, just two brown ruts with water running through them. When I saw that lantern, I told myself I'd ask for directions, maybe a charge for my dead phone, and be back on 64 in an hour. The farmhouse sat low in the hollow where the road leveled before climbing again, white clapboard gone gray, a porch that sagged a little in the middle, a tin roof patched with two different colors. A neat woodpile sat under a lean-to, stacked tight. Bark facing out like someone with a schedule had done it. Wind chimes made from old spoons and a fork hung near the door. They ticked once and went still, like they'd been reminded to mind themselves. I pulled up and killed the engine. Rain ticked on the hood like a hand counting coins. For a second, I just sat there, letting the quiet of the hollow lift its head. Somewhere far off, a creek should have been roaring, but all I heard was the steady whisper of the downpour. The porch light held steady. I grabbed my jacket and ran for it. The screen door pushed open before I knocked. A woman stood there, maybe late 50s, hair braided and pinned, apron over a faded dress. Her face had that soft, steady look country women get from years of doing everything twice. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "You'll get the hollow chill, standing in that," she said, voice bright but measured. "Come on in." I stepped into warm air that smelled like venison stew and damp wool. The room was small but tidy, braided rug, a low bookshelf with hymnals, a wall of framed family photos in mismatched frames. A kerosene lantern burned on a side table, and a generator hummed somewhere under a quilt, muffled. The woman dried her hands on her apron and smiled like we knew each other. "I'm May," she said. "This is our place. Mac'll be in. Boys too." "I'm Ryan," I said, peeling off my jacket. "Sorry to bother." I got turned around off Fireline Road. Thought I could get back to 64, then... "You took the pretty turn," she said, like that explained everything. "Pretty turns don't go where you think." "Guess not," I said, "if I could just get directions." "You'll eat first," she said, no question in it. "Stew's on. Roads will be roads after." Before I could protest, a man stepped in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a rag. Taller than me, early 50s, the kind of lean that comes from using your body on purpose. "Evenin'," he said. "I'm Mac." His eyes did a quick, quiet inventory, boots, jacket, the grease in my knuckles. Then he gave me a small nod like I passed something. "May's stew will fix what's wrong with you." Two younger men came in behind him, bringing the smell of wet and chain oil. One had a thin scar cutting his eyebrow. The other had a farmer's tan that didn't stop at his sleeves. "This here's Cal," May said, nodding at the scar. "And Eli." They mumbled hellos, not rude, just saving words. The table sat under a window that showed nothing but wet black. 5 bowls, 5 spoons, cornbread cooling on a tin plate. A 6th place sat at the far end. Clean plate, fork, and spoon lined up square. A drinking glass turned upside down on a folded napkin. A strip of blue painter's tape ran along the edge of 2 plates with names written in neat block letters. CAL on one. The other strip was blank. May ladled stew into bowls. Rich smell. Meat, onion, a sweetness under it, like molasses, brushed across the top. She set a bowl in front of me and slid butter in my direction. "You a ridge boy or a road boy, Ryan?" she asked. "Road," I said. "Maple Ford." She seemed to file that away. "Mac, say grace." Mac bowed his head, elbows on the table. Lord, thank you for food and safe roads when a man can find them. Keep our hands steady and our house in order. Amen. Amen, they all echoed, soft and tidy. We ate. The stew was too hot and I burned my tongue on the first bite, but it was good. Venison tender, potatoes done through. The cornbread broke under my fingers in a way that said bacon fat had a say in it. We ate mostly quiet, spoons tapping bowls. Rain drummed on the tin roof, and every few minutes the generator coughed and cawed again. Not many strangers find this hollow, Mac said after a while, not looking up from his bowl. You hunting, or you just flat lost? Lost, I said. Trying to get back to 64. We can set you straight, he said. After. Cal sopped stew with cornbread and looked at me like he was measuring my outline. You got people expecting you? He asked. Work in the morning, I said. Night shift, usually. The guys'll notice if I don't show. Good, he said, for no reason I liked. Eli asked if I'd seen the flooded culvert up the ridge. I said I had. He nodded, like that helped him put my truck on a map. May kept my bowl from ever sitting empty long. Mountain courtesy feels warm until you realize it's also a way to keep you in a chair. Fuel's out in the shed, I said eventually, trying to be polite useful. If your generator needs topping up, I can... It's holding, May said. We keep our tanks right. Folks been slipping around the holler lately, Mac added. Survey trucks. Strangers, people measuring things that don't belong to them. County maybe? I said. Mac's mouth flattened. Maybe. He looked at the sixth place at the end of the table and then back at me. You pass many houses on the way down? Didn't see a soul, I said. Good, he said again. That empty place kept catching my eye. The spoon was polished, the glass upside down, waiting for a hand to write it. A strip of blue tape lay beside the plate, no name written on it yet. When May saw me look, she smiled a little too quickly. Old habit, she said. We set extra in case. People come through. Sometimes. Who usually sits there? I asked, because I couldn't help myself. Whoever needs it, she said. Eat your supper. We finished with coffee, dark and strong enough to make my teeth hum, and pound cake with a thin lemon glaze that stuck sweet to my tongue. The generator hummed steady now, like it had settled into its job. The spoon chimes kissed once and were quiet again. Mac stood and stretched his shoulders like a man done with one kind of work and ready for the next. Road's mud, he said. We'll not put a man out in that. You can sleep on the parlor cot. We keep it put up. I started to argue, and then pictured the switchbacks in the rain, my dead phone, the creek running high over the low bridge. I appreciate it, I said. May brought a stack of sheets and a t-shirt 2 sizes too big. You'll rest better not in wet, she said. Bathrooms down the hall, first door right. Don't open the cellar, latch sticks, and we'll be the ones to fix it. Wouldn't dream of it, I said. The hall was narrow, papered with faded flowers. A cross-stitch hung crooked. Blessed are the meek, the E's stitched backward like someone learning. The bathroom was clean in a blunt way. Bar soap on the sink with a hair in it, towel folded in thirds. A brown bottle labeled LYE sat on the back of the toilet beside a roll of painter's tape and a marker. I washed the grease from my hands and listened to the house with the water off. People don't do that enough. Listen to the way a place breathes. Old houses sigh. This one, it held its breath. On my way back, I passed a door with a new brass hasp on old wood. A chain looped through, hanging loose, but the hasp was shut. From behind that door came a smell I knew and couldn't name all at once. Cold earth, something metallic, and a whisper of bleach like someone tried to make something right days ago and only made it worse. The chain trembled the tiniest bit, the way a thing moves when the floor under it shifts and then decides not to. Wrong way, May said right behind me, soft as a hand on a dog's back. She wasn't close enough to touch me, but I felt corrected. Cellar's fussy. We keep it put up. You'll sleep fine in the parlor. Mac unfolded the cot with careful hands, like he liked things to line up. He made the bed with hospital corners that would have made a nurse proud. If you're a church man, you can say a word, he said, no sarcasm in it. I bowed my head without thinking. Thanks for food and dry and people who offer it. Watch the road and the house, I said. Amen. Amen, they said, not together but close. Mountain cadence. They dimmed the lanterns. The generator dropped to a softer hum. The house shifted from hospitality to something like ritual. Mac checked a latch on the back door twice. May wrote a small note and slid it under the sugar bowl. Cal stepped out onto the porch and stood there long enough to get damp. Eli walked the hall once, slow, like counting boards. I lay on the cot, staring at a water stain on the ceiling shaped like a bent country. Houses talk, if you let them. This one's language was small groans in the joists and a patient drip outside the window. I might have slept. I don't remember falling. I woke to metal. Not a clatter, a whisper. The sound of chain shifting against a loop, slow and careful. I held my breath until my ribs hurt. The generator coughed and caught. After it settled, I heard voices in the hall, low. Men's voices with the words taken out, just the rhythm of work. "Bags first," one said. "Latch," another said. "Eli." "It'll catch," May said, her voice low and even, like she was soothing a child. "Don't rush it." Something slid. Not wood on wood, plastic on wood. The sound of weight being shifted by people who didn't want weight to sound like trouble. The smell from the cellar came up stronger. Earth and iron and that clean chemical ghost. The chain whispered again, then stilled. I lay very still and tried to be furniture. Fear has a way of making you pretend to be a quiet thing. My heart knocked against the cot slats, and when I moved my shoulder, the fabric squeaked a little, and I hated it for speaking. The spoon chimes kissed the window once, polite. The latch made that tiny tin sound a latch makes when someone isn't sure if it's shut and asks it to please be. Footsteps passed the doorway and socked feet, weight spread out so the boards wouldn't tell on them. After a while, the generator's hum filled the space again. Almost kind. I must have slept in the way you sleep after a fight you didn't get to have. Morning sat blue at the window when I woke. Fog lay low, hugging the fence line and the stacked wood. The rain had settled for now, but water ran in the ditch with purpose. The house smelled like coffee and bacon and biscuits. May moved around the kitchen like a song she'd known her whole life. Mac sat with the paper like he was reading words that never change. Cal and Eli looked washed and wide awake and a little thinner. We ate quietly. Biscuits were split and buttered, gravy peppered hard, slices of fried apples sweet enough to call it dessert. Halfway through, May set a small plate in front of me with 2 biscuits wrapped in wax paper. "For the road," she said. Mac slid a folded map across the table. Hand-drawn lines, neat labels. Hog Rock, Cutover, Old Logging Road, 64. "You'll take the cut till you see the rock looks like a hog," he said. "Do not take the pretty turn. Pretty turn takes you where you don't mean to go." "I'll keep ugly," I said. He cracked a smile with just the front teeth. "That's right." Cal stood when I did. "I'll walk you out," he said. On the porch, the world was condensed milk. The spoon chimes twitched like they wanted to be still and had to try. Cal put a hand on the rail, the way men do when they're holding something in place you can't see. "You're gonna be fine," he said, voice low. "Just don't come back down here thinking you owe thanks. We don't do that. Road runs one way." "What's that mean?" I asked. "It means don't bring people," he said. "Don't bring law. Don't bring ideas. You left with all your pieces. That's your luck. Let it stand." "I didn't see anything," I said, which was true and not. He nodded like that was the right answer. "Good. That's what you'll say if anyone asks." May stood in the doorway with her hands folded like a church lady. "You be careful telling," she said. "People twist stories to make the parts they're scared of look small." "I'm not much of a teller," I said. Half lie. "I talk into a mic and tell strangers things I shouldn't." She smiled like she knew that already. Eli leaned in the hallway, arms folded, eyes on the floor. I stepped off the last porch stair and my boot sank into a soft patch by the stoop. Fresh dirt, turned not long ago. A small square of blue painter's tape stuck out of the mud where it met the grass. A name was written there, in neat block letters. R-Y-A-N. I looked up. May saw me see it and said, "Light as sugar." "Oh, that's for the cabbage rows. We write names when folks help plant." "I didn't," I said. "Sometimes you will," she said. Mac was already at the gate with his hand on the post like a man seeing a guest off after a service. I got in my truck. The engine turned stubborn and caught. I waved because you wave in the mountains, even when your stomach is a fist. Mac lifted 2 fingers from the post. Cal kept his hand on the rail. Eli didn't move. May's smile was the same as when she'd opened the door, like I'd been expected and measured and squared. The road out was ugly and right. The hog rock looked exactly like a hog if hogs were made of gray stone, and I took the turn that wasn't pretty and avoided the place where the road invited me to die. When I hit 64, and bars bloomed on my phone like wildflowers after rain, I pulled into a gravel turnout and put my forehead on the steering wheel and laughed because my body thought that was better than crying. I thought about calling the sheriff. I pictured the questions. Where exactly? How far past which cut? Whose house? Did you see anything illegal? I pictured the pauses where the deputy's pen waited to hear a better story than... I don't know. I pictured a cruiser driving down a hollow that doesn't like headlights. I didn't call. I went to work that night. The station smelled like gasoline and old coffee and oil rags, the smells that say normal like church bells say Sunday. Wayne griped about the lottery machine. A county truck rolled through for diesel and the driver said a hillside slid off near Fireline, so don't go sightseeing unless you want to end up on a Facebook page with your tires in the air. We laughed because it's easier than not. Around 2 a.m., a text buzzed my dead inside phone. Unknown number, no name. The message was a photo. I opened it without thinking. It was their table, same wood, same lantern glow. My bowl from the night before, scraped clean, Cal's plate beside it. The 6th place, filled at last. A hand slid into frame from the right, pale and scrubbed too clean between the nails. Fingers curled around the spoon like it belonged to them. No caption. I stared until the screen dimmed. The cooler hummed in the corner, tinny and worse for age. Wayne asked if I was training for a staring contest with my phone. I locked it and put it face down like that could make a picture. Not be a picture. A minute later it buzzed again. Same number. Just one word this time, in neat block letters that looked like they'd been written with a marker on blue tape and then typed into my life. Counted. If you're into these real horror stories, don't forget to subscribe. You'll hear them exactly how they happened. No monsters added. I try to tell them straight so I can live with them. I didn't block the number. That sounds dumb, but I thought if I kept it, I'd be in the loop if there was a loop to be in. Nothing else came that night. When I drove home at dawn, I took the long way and avoided anything that looked like a hollow with a memory. For a few days, I worked and slept and told myself a story I could live with. Generous family, old house, local weirdness. Nothing criminal, nothing I could name. Then, a week later, I was at the parts counter when a local came in and said some surveyors had gone missing up a ridge road off 19. Park rangers found their truck at a gate, doors open, coffee in the holders, cold and full. Folks in town cracked jokes about the state paying people to get lost. I smiled like I had a mouth that knew how. That night I got off at midnight and took the switchbacks down slow. Fog sat on the road like an extra lane. When I turned onto my street, the culvert at the end of my driveway breathed out a smell that made me stop in the headlights. That faint, clean sting like old bleach with a sour undernote like wet iron. It rose, hung, and then pulled back into the pipe like air deciding to be water. A car rolled by with no plates. Not unusual. Not here. Plates fall off for reasons. The driver didn't look over. The taillights bled red into the mist and went away like a thought you push down. 2 nights later, another text, a photo of a plate with a strip of blue tape on the edge. The name written on it was mine, Ryan, clean and square. The plate was scraped clean. In the corner of the frame, out of focus, the brass hasp of a door and a chain hanging open, like the door was learning to stay shut without help. No caption, no timestamp even, like the photo belonged to a clock that wasn't mine. I called the number. It didn't ring. It didn't fail. The call just never happened, like the line knew the difference between pulling and being pulled. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat on my couch with the TV on a fishing show and the sound off and the closed captioning stumbling over words like spinnerbait and structure and depth. Every creek in the B-roll looked like the one at the bottom of that hollow. Every fisherman had a face like Max if you squinted and wanted to be wrong. I've driven past the turn to that hollow since. I don't turn down it. I don't look long. I don't stop for strangers when it smells like rain. When a house shows me a lantern now, I keep driving and tell myself they're fine. If a friend asks for directions, I draw maps that do not include pretty turns. People ask sometimes why I tell these. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should let the road run one way and shut my mouth. But I keep thinking about that 6th place and the way the spoon glinted and how mountain courtesy can box you in if you don't know the rules. I keep thinking about the word counted and the way my name looked on tape in the mud, as if the ground keeps a ledger and the living do too. I still believe most folks up here are good. They'll pull you out of a ditch and they'll lend you a jack and they'll send you home with beans. But there are hollows where the road narrows and the windows stay nailed, and families in those places keep their own order. They don't call it a rule. They call it what keeps the house from falling in. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's the scariest part. How normal it sounded when May said, "We keep it put up." Thanks for sticking with me through this one. If you've ever come across something strange in the woods, or even just a place that gave you that feeling like you weren't supposed to be there, drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and you'd be surprised how many people have stories that never make the news. And if you want more Appalachian horror like this, make sure you're subscribed with the bell on, because I've got another one coming soon that'll keep you up at night. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.